There's a type of question that doesn't seek an answer. It seeks control. And the most dangerous thing is that you've already answered several of them without realizing it. It wasn't for lack of intelligence. It was because they were designed precisely to seem harmless, polite, normal. But behind these simple phrases, there's a silent pattern of manipulation that shapes decisions, distorts perceptions, and gradually redefines your behavior. Most people believe they're in control of their own lives, but in practice, they're only reacting to what others know how to provoke. And here's the truth that few dare to face. It's not the big decisions that reveal your weaknesses. It's the small, automatic responses you give every day. That's where you surrender power, without negotiation, without awareness, without strategy. If you stop now and think coldly, you'll realize that many uncomfortable situations in your life began with something seemingly simple. A question, a well-phrased sentence, a moment when you said yes without really wanting to. And from there, everything unfolded as if you had agreed to it from the beginning. This is not a coincidence. It's a pattern. It's politics guided by reality, not by ideals. Those who understand real human nature know exactly where to apply pressure, how to guide, and when to act. The end justifies the means. And in this case, the means is to make you participate in your own control. You are not forced. You are guided. And the more you seek to be seen as someone good, understanding, easy to deal with, the more predictable you become. And predictability in this game is weakness. But here's the turning point, and perhaps the most important of all. These questions only work as long as you don't see them. From the moment you start to perceive the pattern, something changes. You stop reacting and start choosing. You stop automatically validating and start analyzing. And this completely changes how people interact with you. Because, like it or not, the world doesn't reward naivete. It responds to clarity. Better to be feared than loved as long as you avoid being hated. And that doesn't mean becoming cold. It means becoming aware. Throughout this content, you will understand how these 5 questions work, why they are used, and most importantly, how to neutralize them without conflict, without wear and tear, and without losing your position. Because in the end, it's not about avoiding questions. It's about not giving answers that should never have been given. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. He silently observes when someone performs an action without consulting him, and only then innocently asks, "You don't mind, do you?" It seems simple, almost casual, but there's a psychological engineering behind it. It's an old strategy, aligned with the logic of Niccolo Machiavelli. Act first, shape perception later. Once the action has been taken, disagreeing seems excessive, an unnecessary conflict, almost a breach of social harmony. And that's where the trap lies. The person isn't asking for your opinion. They're seeking retroactive validation. It's politics guided by reality, not ideals. Deep down, they've already decided and just want you to confirm. And if you don't realize this, you end up being led to accept something you never chose. This happens in professional environments, family settings, and even friendships. A colleague makes a decision on a project and then involves you with this question. A family member takes action and places the emotional responsibility on you, and without realizing it, you begin to live under the decisions of others, believing you participated in them. Now think about it coldly, like someone who understands that decisions should be based on real human nature. When someone uses this technique, they are operating under a very clear principle. The end justifies the means. It doesn't matter how you react, as long as in the end the situation is validated. And here's a crucial point. Those who don't know how to say no at the right time end up saying yes out of emotional obligation. A practical example. Imagine someone at work changes an important deadline without consulting you, and then says, "You don't mind, do you?" If you accept, you automatically assume responsibility for something that wasn't your decision. Now, a more strategic move would be to respond neutrally. "I prefer to be consulted before such changes." Simple, direct, without conflict, but it repositions you in the game. This is the calculated use of force. It's not aggression, it's clarity. And those who master this begin to be seen with more respect, not necessarily loved, but, as Machiavelli would say, perhaps a little more feared. And this completely changes the dynamic. The problem is that most people are still stuck on the appearance of virtue. They want to seem kind, understanding, easy to get along with. But in practice, this becomes an open door to subtle manipulation, because those who play this kind of game understand constant adaptability. They test limits, observe reactions, and adjust their behavior according to your response. If you always give in, you teach others how to circumvent you. And that has nothing to do with being a good person. It has to do with not knowing how to protect your space. Virtù and fortuna go hand in hand here. Your ability to perceive the game, virtù, and the opportunity to act at the right moment, fortuna. And when you start to see this, something changes. Because you realize that this question is not isolated. It is only the gateway to something deeper, a pattern that repeats itself in different ways, with other words, and even sharper intentions. He leans slightly, changes his tone of voice, and throws out the phrase as if offering a gift. "Can I be honest with you?" It seems respectful, it seems considerate, but most of the time it's just an elegant disguise for a prepared attack. Someone who truly values you doesn't need permission to be truthful. Truth, when it comes from someone honest, doesn't ask for a stage. It simply appears. But not here. Here, there's a psychological construct. By asking permission, the person transfers the emotional responsibility for what comes next to you. If you say yes, you automatically accept anything that is said, no matter how aggressive or unnecessary. This is politics guided by reality, not by ideals. It's not about being sincere, it's about ensuring you don't react afterward. Because deep down, whoever uses this approach has already understood a very clear principle. The end justifies the means. And the means here is to make you lower your guard. Now observe more closely as someone who makes decisions based on real human nature. This type of question creates a false sense of choice. You think you're in control, but you've already been led down a path where any answer you give compromises you. If you say no, you seem insecure, closed off, perhaps even arrogant. If you say yes, you become vulnerable to whatever comes next. It's a strategic move. And this appears a lot in competitive environments. A classic example, someone at work says, "Can I be honest with you?" before criticizing your performance in front of others. It's not about helping, it's about positioning, about appearing superior while you're put on the defensive. Now, someone who understands the calculated use of force responds differently. They might say, "If it's something constructive, you can speak directly." Watch the game change. You don't refuse the conversation, but you also don't give up emotional control. This changes the playing field. This repositions you as someone who isn't easily led. And here's a point that few realize. This technique only works with those who are still trapped by the need for approval, those who need to be seen as good, open, mature. The appearance of virtue becomes a trap because you accept things you shouldn't just to maintain that image. But those who play at a higher level understand that being respected is worth more than being loved. Better to be feared than loved, as long as you avoid being hated. And that requires balance. It's not about reacting aggressively, but about not allowing invasions disguised as honesty. Over time, you notice patterns, the same people, the same scripts, the same masked intentions, and then you begin to see beyond the surface. Because this question, just like the previous one, is not isolated. It's part of a sequence, a larger game, where each phrase opens space for the next, and where, if you're not careful, you end up playing by rules you never chose. He approaches with an almost admiring tone, as if acknowledging your intelligence. What would you do in my place? At first glance, it seems like respect. It seems he values your vision, your experience, your way of thinking. But behind this, there is a much more strategic maneuver than it appears. This question is not a request for advice. It's a silent transfer of responsibility. By answering, you cease to be merely an observer and become, indirectly, a co-author of the decision. And this is where the gears start turning. If everything goes well, the merit will be his. After all, he was the one who executed it. But if it goes wrong, there's a ready-made scapegoat, you. This is a pure reflection of decisions based on real human nature. It's not about learning, it's about sharing the risk. And those who understand this begin to realize that not every request for help is innocent. Some are carefully positioned to protect the person asking. Now think like someone who plays the game consciously, someone who understands that the end justifies the means when it comes to strategy. This question creates an elegant trap because it activates your ego. You want to help, you want to seem useful, you want to show that you have clarity, and without realizing it, you enter the game. A classic example, a friend says they're thinking of quitting their job and asks, "What would you do in my place?" If you answer directly, "I would quit," or "I would stay," you've taken on part of the decision. And in the future, if something goes wrong, the phrase comes back, "But you're the one who said you would do that." Now, someone who operates with calculated use of force responds differently. It depends on your goals. What do you want in the long term? See the difference. You return the responsibility without seeming evasive. You guide, but you don't take over. That's strategy. That's constant adaptability. You participate in the game, but you don't become a piece of it. And here's the point that separates those who are manipulated from those who lead. Understanding that helping doesn't mean carrying the weight of others' choices. Most people, wanting to maintain an appearance of virtue, end up assuming emotional responsibilities that aren't theirs. They want to be seen as wise, trustworthy, indispensable, but this comes at a price. Because whoever always answers, always guides, always decides, ends up being the target when something goes wrong. And this is not a coincidence, it's the norm. Virtù and fortuna come into play again, the ability to perceive the intention behind the question and the opportunity to position yourself correctly. And when you start doing this, something curious happens. The questions change. People start to hesitate before engaging you because they realize you're not easily led. And it's precisely at this point that the game starts to get more interesting. Because not everyone will accept losing this kind of control so easily. He doesn't deny it, he doesn't explain, he doesn't defend himself. He simply tilts his gaze and asks, "Who told you that?" It seems like a natural reaction, but it's anything but. When someone responds like that, they are completely ignoring the content of the accusation and redirecting the focus to the source of the information. It's a silent and extremely efficient inversion. Suddenly, the problem ceases to be what was done and becomes who revealed it. This is pure strategy. It's politics guided by reality, not by ideals. Because those who understand the game know that controlling information is more important than justifying actions. And in this move, the person gains time, shifts the focus of the conversation, and often eliminates the threat before even needing to explain themselves. This isn't impulsive. It's calculated. It's the kind of behavior that stems from decisions based on real human nature, where protecting one's position matters more than upholding the truth. Now, observe this more objectively, like someone who no longer reacts automatically. This question is a trap because it tries to pull you into a situation where you lose leverage. If you answer and reveal the source, you open the door to retaliation, manipulation, or even isolation of that person. And the original problem? It disappears. It vanishes from the conversation as if it never existed. A clear example. In a work environment, you confront someone about important information that was omitted. Instead of explaining, they ask, "Who told you that?" If you answer, the focus shifts. If you maintain your position, that doesn't matter. The point is what happened. You break the pattern. This is a calculated use of force. It's not direct confrontation, it's narrative control. And those who master this begin to realize that many conversations aren't about truth. They're about power, about who controls the course of the situation, and whoever accepts changing the subject loses. But here's a detail that few realize. This strategy only works with those who still feel obligated to justify everything. Those who still seek approval, absolute clarity, total transparency, even when the other person doesn't play by the same rules. The appearance of virtue, once again, becomes an exploitable weakness because you expose yourself too much, explain too much, give away too much, and the person on the other side understands this. Better to be feared than loved, not in the sense of intimidation, but of not being easily manipulated. Avoid being hated, yes, but without becoming predictable. Because predictability is what allows this type of maneuver to work. And when you start to break this pattern, something changes. The person realizes they can no longer easily control you. And it is at this moment that the game intensifies, because when someone loses control of the information, they seek another way to regain control, usually with an even more direct, even more dangerous question. He looks into your eyes, creates an atmosphere of closeness, and utters the phrase that seems simple but carries enormous weight. "You trust me, right?" This is not an ordinary question. It's the root of all others. Because the moment you say yes, something invisible happens. You hand over an emotional blank check. From then on, any future action is protected by this pre-approved trust. Questioning afterward becomes inconsistent. Disagreeing seems like betrayal. And that's exactly what makes this question so powerful. It doesn't seek to know if you trust. It seeks to ensure that you don't question. It's politics guided by reality, not by ideals. Those who use this strategy understand that if they can validate the emotional basis, they no longer need to justify their actions. The end justifies the means. And here, the means is to create a silent commitment that binds you more than any rational argument. Now observe with a cool head, like someone who makes decisions based on real human nature. This question activates something deep, the desire for connection, loyalty, belonging. Nobody wants to seem distrustful, harsh, or distant. And that's where you enter the game without realizing it. A clear example, someone proposes something risky, a business deal, a personal decision, an important choice, and before fully explaining asks, "You trust me, right?" If you say yes, you automatically reduce your capacity for critical analysis, because any subsequent doubt conflicts with the trust you've already declared. Now, someone who operates with the calculated use of force responds differently. Trust is built with clarity. Explain it to me better. See the repositioning. You don't deny trust, but you also don't relinquish control. You maintain autonomy. That's constant adaptability. That's not playing under emotional pressure. And those who learn this begin to realize how many decisions in life were made, not by logic, but by this kind of subtle induction. And here's the most important point of all. This question only works with those who still confuse trust with obedience. Those who believe that trust means not questioning, not investigating, not analyzing. But in practice, that's not trust. It's submission, disguised as virtue. The appearance of virtue, once again, transforms into strategic weakness. Because those who understand virtù and fortuna know that real trust doesn't eliminate questioning, it demands even more clarity. Better to be feared than loved, in this context, means not being someone easily led by misused emotional bonds. Avoiding being hated, yes, but without giving up one's own conscience. Because in the end, those who hand over this kind of blank check rarely realize the exact moment they lost control. And when they do, they're already in a game where getting out costs more than getting in. And perhaps now you're beginning to see that these 5 questions were never isolated. They've always been part of the same system. Now that you see the pattern, the responsibility shifts. You can no longer say you didn't know. These 5 questions still exist, being used every day in casual conversations, in professional settings, in personal relationships. But the difference is that now you can see what's behind them. And that changes everything. Because those who understand the game stop reacting automatically. They start observing, they start choosing, and most importantly, they stop unconsciously relinquishing power. The big question isn't avoiding these situations. It's deciding how you're going to position yourself when they happen again, because they will happen. Here's a thought that might bother you, but needs to be considered. How many decisions in your life were truly your own? And how many were responses induced by this type of approach? How many times have you said yes just to avoid conflict? How many times have you accepted something just to maintain an image? And more importantly, how much has this cost you so far? From now on, you have 2 options. Continue operating on autopilot, repeating patterns that weaken you, or start acting with awareness, strategy, and clarity, because in the real world, decisions based on human nature are worth more than good intentions. And those who learn to position themselves correctly don't need to raise their voices. They just need not to give in. So I'll leave you with a direct challenge. The next time someone asks one of these questions, will you answer as you always have, or will you break the pattern? Will you continue playing everyone else's game, or will you finally start playing your own? If this content made you think, if any of these situations have happened to you, write it in the comments. I want to know which of these questions got to you the most, and what will you do differently from now on? And if you want to continue developing this type of vision, more strategic, more conscious, more aligned with reality, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here you don't learn to react. You learn to see before the game even begins.